All right, so what's up? What's up? Today I want to talk to you about the state of freight rates. And I personally don't think this is something that's going to change. I think that the system is structured in a way that benefits shippers. And there's a lot of blame to go around. You can give some of the blame to freight brokers, give some of the blame to shippers. But I think you also have to give a lot of the blame to carriers, right? Because it's ultimately the carriers' decision to accept a load or to not accept a load, right? And I'll tell you, just in my situation, I've had a lot of loads, and loads are not always priced how you want them to be priced. Sometimes you're going to get loads that are cheaper than others. Sometimes you're going to get loads that are really cheap. And unfortunately, you can always move those loads. It doesn't matter how cheap the load is. If you got the time, you're going to move that load if you just stay with it. Now, the reason why I think that happens is because you have a lot of drivers, more drivers than there have ever been. And there's always somebody out there that will accept a load. I don't care what price is on it, because you have different people that have different situations going on. So there are going to be times where you have a lot of cheap freight and drivers are going to accept it. And I think that that is a big part of the problem. Drivers accepting loads that they know are really cheap loads. And anytime you have that, there's no repercussions for cheap freight. There's no penalty that the freight broker or the shipper is paying because it's cheap freight. Then the numbers are justified. You know, it says that I can have whatever number I want on it and I can still move the freight. But when those loads sit, and they sit for long periods of time, if they're priced incorrectly, then that says something to the shipper. That says something to the freight broker, that you cannot price these loads like this and still get them moved, right? So I think it's something that is probably never going to get solved as long as we have an abundance of truck drivers, an abundance of owner operators, right? Because you'll always have people that will accept those loads. I think that there's a lot of blame to go around in the industry as to why freight rates are what they are, but to not include the truck driver in that equation. I think a lot of times I hear truck drivers blaming other people for rates. I think you really have to blame truck drivers for rates, right? Because if you don't accept those loads, then, you know, those loads won't move. It's that simple, right? So I do get the side that, you know, says that, you know, truckers are in the business for making money. They're not in the business just to sit a truck. But at sometimes, when you really look at this situation, you have to make the decision to sit the truck. Because if you don't, you'll undervalue, or you'll take the value away from your asset, right? And I think that's what's happened now. Trucks have become less and less valuable because there's so many of them, and because so many low rates are accepted on a daily basis. So I think the idea of truckers not having some responsibility for rates, the reason why rates are what they are, is really asinine. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I move a load in Atlanta from Marshville, North Carolina to Atlanta, Georgia for a long period of time. And I moved that load anywhere from $600 to $1,100. And at $600, I can still move it. I can still make money on the load. At $1,100, I'm going to make money. I'm going to get the load moved, right? So when you think about that, now, of course, different times, different things are happening. There are different dynamics going on in lanes that allow for you to price loads at certain numbers, right? But all in all, you know, that's a almost 300-mile lane. If a truck driver does not accept less than $2.50 a mile, or less than $2.75 a mile, then that load is not going to move. But you got plenty of drivers that will accept that load at $500, right? So that says to the shipper that $600 for that load is a solid price. $700 for that load is a solid price. The times that that load goes up to that 1100 number is when capacity gets tight in the lane, don't have as many truck drivers, and those lanes start to sit. Those loads start to sit. Then they have to raise the prices in order to move the load. See, that's what happens. When loads don't move, prices get raised. But most times you have truck drivers that come in to save the day and move the load regardless of the price. So we have to really look at the industry, I think, as a whole, and start looking at it and saying, am I accepting loads that are basically devaluing my asset? Am I moving loads that are taking away the value of my truck? And if you are, I think that's something that you really have to look at to decide if you're making the best decision for you and your business. I think that's a question that we all have to ask, especially if you're a truck driver. Are you making a decision that is going to be beneficial to you in the long run? It's not just about today, but it's about the long term, what you're going to be doing in the long term, how your truck, how your asset will serve you. If you start to devalue it, if you start to take less and less money, you'll continue to take less, and you'll continue to devalue your asset. That's what I want to share with you today. Certainly hope this information is helpful. If you're interested in learning more about the freight broker business, I'll leave a free link. It's in the description box. It'll give you access to my 5-video series titled How the Load Movement Process Works. This video will take you through the process of load movement, shows you exactly how we move loads from point A to point B. It'll show me in the office talking to shippers, talking to carriers, so you get a better understanding of how the business works. So until the next time, I wish you the very best in your life and business. See you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded.